The larger issue at hand of all of this starts at anti-intellectualism. The rise of anti-intellectualism is a reason why people would rather be more compelled and confident to give someone who just has a pretty face their time, their resources, i.e. money, rather than actually go seek true help from the experts, all in the name of, oh, well, you don't need a degree. A degree is just a piece of paper. So what? So many people have gotten degrees and they don't even use it. All in the name of that. But somebody got your money, somebody got your coin, somebody without a license says it's okay to still practice as a psychology expert. What we're witnessing is a cultural movement where real expertise is being overlooked and confidence is being mistaken as competence. Somehow, in the rise of microphone experts, people have convinced themselves, when I say people, I mean consumers of online media, have convinced themselves that having a podcast equates to authority. Having a podcast does not equate to having authority. This is one of the drivers of a lot of misinformation that we see across online, whether it's about psychology, health, civil rights, dating, relationships. All of these things are up for grabs in the online stratosphere for anybody to pick up a microphone and say, hey, I'm an expert, everybody has a microphone, everybody is qualified to speak on it. There's a reason why I literally have a notepad in front of me, because I went and did my research and I said, you know what? I want to make sure that when I'm speaking about these things, that I'm speaking about it as accurately as possible. So, and I also want to make sure that I'm following in a way that doesn't confuse or mislead or warp whatever I'm trying to land. Do y'all still believe that a degree is just a piece of paper? Are we still believing that lie that was told to us? Because as of right now, there are content creators going back to their 9-to-5s, going back to the things that got them a degree, because they know, just like the very wealthy and the bourgeois class knows, that a degree is not just a piece of paper. How many times have you heard celebrities in the past say, oh, well, I don't want my child to do what I do. I want them to go be a contributor to society. There is a reason why the rich and the very wealthy and very powerful still send their children to school. It's because the thing that is learned in education is not just what is taught, not just the math, the physics, the English literature, the history. It is also the character that is built in going to pursue an education, and a higher education at that. It's different. It's a different level of commitment that I think people have turned their noses up at, because there's not much equity and monetary reward happening in that space, especially in this day and age, especially in this economy. I just want to remind the people that say a degree is just a piece of paper that a degree signifies and cements your position as the type of person that you are. What I find interesting about this lie is that a lot of times it comes from people who've never taken the time to actually go ahead and get the degree. You know, it's always someone without the degree telling everyone else that it's just a piece of paper. A degree can represent a lot of things: discipline, rigor, accountability, commitment. And there's a lot of people who aren't willing to commit to a lot of things. Commit to parenthood, marriage, a job, We are just in that society where everything is sporadic. You like one thing one day, you like another the next day. It's an instantaneous cycle that we have caught ourselves in since the beginning and the peak of the digital age. And myself included, I am guilty of that sometimes. But nowhere will I ever say that a degree is just a piece of paper. Because I know, even when I was in elementary school, I was the most valuable player on the team. And everybody wanted me to be a part of their group when there was a team project, because not only did I have the rigor and the discipline, but I came up with some crazy banging ideas. And that's one thing that no one can ever take from you, is your degree. Unless you're like Miss Cheyenne Bryant and you never completed one at an accredited school. I just want to say this in this entire opinion piece that I'm going on a tangent off of. Like, you know, constant exposure to trauma and misinformation really does harm to our brains. It's gotten to a point where we are just desensitized to every and anything. You know, education. One thing that education does is that it teaches empathy, nuance, and critical thinking, all in the same setting. These are some of the skills that we have lost as a society, as a collective, because everything is so quick. We can easily just become fatigued from anything that may have, you know, kept us drawn in and empathetic and caring about the next person. Look at COVID. Look at the last panoramic, as we have to say on here, because YouTube and them are always demonetizing and taking things down. You guys remember when everybody was like all in this together and we cared and we had empathy and we put everything to the side to tackle this global crisis? And then immediately after that, it was like everything went up. Rent went up, groceries went up, childcare went up. Like, it just became this rat race to survive. In an economy and in a time, to be honest, I feel like the economy did not need the inflation of these prices that we're seeing now. It did not need that. It absolutely did not call for that. The greed is just a means to an end at this point. Everything is just so expensive. So right now we are in a time of empathy fatigue and emotional numbness. Nothing moves us the same way. In the beginning of this video, I discussed all the Black women that were unalived within the past 2 or 3 months. And even now, it's crickets. Like, it never happened. Just something we moved past from. I know Black women as a collective haven't moved on, but everyone else seems to have moved on. It says Pat McGrath on the lips, by the way. Ooh, yeah, it's juicy. On the topic of degrees, I go by the name of 100 degrees of MNK, but that has nothing to do with my degrees or how many degrees I have. I have 2 degrees, an undergrad and a graduate degree. I did my undergrad in communications with a minor in television and radio. And I did my master's in marketing with a concentration of social media and mobile marketing, because I wanted to know how to better market myself. And also, I wanted to be aware of how things are being marketed for me and will be marketed to me in the future. Now, on the topic of, most people that go and get a degree, they never use their degree. Most of them don't use a degree. Another lie. Yes, my current role isn't a marketing position. My current role at work isn't in communications. That is tied to a whole nother discussion about equity, inclusion, and just what the journey looks like for Black professionals trying to land their first entry-level role in a saturated and heavily competitive market. You know, there will always be a market for doctors, nurses, lawyers, engineers, etc., because those people move society forward as far as keeping our health and safety intact. The other half of moving society forward shows up in the arts, in humanities, in all things that we love to see in entertainment, politics, and so forth. It's very difficult, and the window to step in is this big. So that aside, am I just going to sit down and let my degree go to waste? Absolutely not. This setup, the lighting, the audio, the editing that's going to come afterwards, the copy, the caption, the targeting, all of those things I learned in school, and I'm learning how to perfect it even more as I interact with these interfaces day to day. Some people would have just quit and decided, you know what, I'm just going to keep myself to an everyday job and never push for my dream and not embrace the pivot. Like, I use it every day in how I adjust my lighting, how I write my scripts for my voiceovers, for my podcasts, for what I'm going to talk about. And my 9 to 5, all the things that I learned in college and graduate school show up in how I'm able to engage in conflict resolution, de-escalation, being diplomatic, all those things that you have to learn as you go throughout life. But in college, you really learn how to use your soft skills. You really learn how to, you know, get a sense of what it means to have interpersonal connections and building true relationships, true networking, not just following people and going to the same event as them, but actually building relationships, going to lunch with somebody who you would like to collaborate with, really honing into hospitality. All those are the different ways that I currently use all the degrees that I've got. And it's still not going to stop me from going to get another one that I don't have the finances or the status in my circle, in my world, in my place of work yet. Because that process that it took me to get that degree is the same process that it's going to take for me to become successful outside of that space. So I would be remiss if I downplayed my accomplishments or the accomplishments of anybody who is brave enough to go out and get a degree. It's not only very expensive, it's taxing. It will have you questioning if you are really smart and intelligent. It will have you questioning if it was even worth it. But once you get on that stage and you move that tassel to your left, or when you put that robe on for my doctors, because I've seen it and I was just like, oh my gosh, I need that. I need that. That was my process on graduation day, getting my master's. Even before they told us to turn our tassel, when they were presenting the doctoral degrees, I'm like, oh my gosh, I need that. That's going to be me in the next couple of years. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I don't know how I'm going to be able to afford it, but I need that. So it is just beyond a piece of paper. It is grit. It is audacity. One of the biggest takeaways that I want people who are watching this video to understand is that having a degree and completing it to the highest level as a doctor, it carries weight and it should not be taken lightly. I want people to also understand that a degree does not define you. Your value exists regardless. However, with your worth being inherent, the icing on the cake that graduating from an accredited institution at the highest level, it will never, ever, 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 ever be one where you could just minimize according to the status quo.